Are you filming now?
I've been filming this whole time.
You've been filming the whole time. God. Okay, so to give you a bit of background about who I am, where I come from, ko waio, no Kotirana, no Norway, no Inganangi o Tupuna, he Pākehā, he tangata Tiriti Ahau, he whānau mai I Pukekohe, engari I Tipuaki au I raru I te marawarangi toto ke Oniwa. So, I'm a Pākehā, born in New Zealand with Scottish, English and Norwegian ancestry. And I come from a background of a lived experience of mental health distress, substance issues, addiction, homelessness and incarceration. Spent years in jails and been in active recovery for about 15 years now. I came from a what most might call a normal family, but a lot of my time I was isolated. I didn't have good role models, and my father left when I was very young, so I never really had that father figure to guide me in life. So I found role models in other older males that I aspired to, but unfortunately they were in more of an antisocial context. And most of those people came from a gang or an antisocial environment where alcohol and drug use and even criminal offending was the norm. I think I really craved that direction, and that worked for me. That really started in my very early teen years, probably around 11 years old. From about 11 years old I started to go off the rails and really seek some sort of guidance or direction in life. So school was very unsuccessful for me. I was always told how clever I was, IQ and all that sort of stuff, but I just didn't know how to apply it because I couldn't focus. I didn't know how to focus on what I was doing in that setting.
Yeah.
I think I always felt a little bit lost. Yeah, I think substance use was a way of self-medicating, a way of escape. I found myself engaging with criminal justice system quite early in life, and I look back now and realise that I was diagnosed, I was defined, and I was called bad. So I celebrated that badness. I became that person, and that diagnosis, that definition. The system needed to define me. And I slipped very easily into that role. Systems, all of the systems, the health system, the criminal justice system. Yeah. I look at it now and think that they needed people like me to create that underclass, and that I was just another one of many who became lost in that system. I rebelled, and I was very antisocial. I was called conduct disorder when I was very young, and later they would call that antisocial personality disorder. And I fitted very well into that definition, and experienced incarceration, boys' homes, and was in the criminal justice system very early. Most of my teenage years in prisons and institutions, including mental health institutions. So offending of some sort, of any sort, that draw you into the system. And once you've been hooked that first time, you become an offender, and you are viewed differently and judged, and you feel judged by the system. And that's what it was to become part of a marginalised group within society of antisocial people. So the system looked for me for my next engagement. And as I say, when I spent most of my teenage years in jails and institutions, that was quite constant. From that age of sort of 11, 12, particularly around 13, going in and out of institutions, in and out of the system, you'd get out, you'd be arrested, and you'd be on bail or not, you might be in custody, but constantly engaged with the criminal justice system. And the way that they dealt with substance use back then was through our mental health system. So I was sent to Oakley Hospital and to Tokanui Mental Hospital because I was a heroin addict, because that's how we treated substance use at a severe level in those days. You must be crazy because you're a heroin addict. So my family was very small, with my father leaving when I was very young, and only having one brother and one sister. I didn't really have a family unit. And so those antisocial groups became my family. Now, I didn't like them all, but I found within them people I identified with, and they became my family moving forwards, my supports in life, my role models. And whether that was right or wrong, that's how it was, and that's how it is for many people today who feel very attached to those social groups that they associate with, and look at them as their family. So around the age of about 20 years old, that I pretty much just learned how to not get caught. And I actually started to moderate some of my behaviours to fly under the radar. I still used substances, I still offended, but I started to get a job because I'd learned that in prison. I'd actually learned basic functioning within the prison system. And I bumbled along for probably the next 20, 25 years, playing sport, working, studying, doing the elements of normal life, but never at the level I could have achieved if I wasn't using substances and had that criminal mindset, I think, and my focus on that. Now, in many ways, I moved within different worlds and learned how to wear the mask that was appropriate. And I suppose when you're doing that for many periods, for decades, you actually lose sight of who you really are. And it all becomes about people pleasing, about manipulation, and about getting your own needs met and wearing the mask that's appropriate to that. In my early 40s, I experienced some challenges around my health and around financial things and relationships, and I actually spiraled into some very serious drug offending. And I'd managed to stay out of the criminal justice system for quite some time, but I found myself at the age of about 44 doing a very long sentence for serious drug offending. I kicked and screamed the whole way through the process of that situation, and in denial, still using, didn't want to wear the tag addict, and it didn't serve me well. So if I had surrendered at that point, I wouldn't have been sentenced to 6.5 years in jail, and I would have had other options, but I just didn't know any better. I ended up serving most of that sentence, and unfortunately, and it was towards the end of that I actually, in a prison drug treatment unit, that I actually found a sense of recovery and decided to give it a go, and I surrendered to that process, and life's been very different ever since. That's where I found recovery as I define it. So So I still had a bit of that sentence to go, and I just surrendered to the fact that I was an addict. I started to listen. I engaged with the Narcotics Anonymous program within the prison, and I built some relationships. And when I was released, I immersed myself in Narcotics Anonymous and recovery groups, and just found a sense of peace in my life. I actually was in denial within my sentence, and kept going to the parole board and being declined parole. And eventually I said, okay, I'll do your program. My intention was to fly under the radar, to go down there, tick the box, put the mask on, and position myself for release from prison. When I got there, I was setting up my cell, I was unpacking, and a guy came to the door who I had done a lot of jail with when I was young. He'd always been there. I was surprised he was alive. But he was a mentor in the program who had just completed the drug treatment unit. And I couldn't tell you what he said, but he spoke to me for 5 minutes saying things like, this program's great, you'll really enjoy it, it's a chance for another way, Dave. And I didn't listen, I just looked at him, and he had this sense of peace about him. He looked really healthy, and I just wanted it. And I shifted right then. I moved from pre-contemplative to actually contemplating change in my life. It was a powerful moment, and I just surrendered at that point. And instead of trying to manipulate the system, I did what they say, where I took the cotton wool out of my ears and put it in my mouth and shut up and listen. And it's been great. Finding a sense of humility, I think, and accepting that I needed to grow and learn and change. After that, it was a time of relearning, I suppose, who I really was. The program itself, the drug treatment program, has 3 phases of self-awareness, who am I? Self-acceptance, actually accepting that, and self-control, learning who I want to be. I would probably spend about another 6 months in that program, and then was released back into mainstream and released about 6 months later, from prison. into NA attendance, recovery groups, and living life a different way. I wasn't really tempted to relapse or to go back. I mean, I was released into the same environment that I was imprisoned from. So the same people were there, but it's like they weren't there. They weren't my focus. And I was so busy with and excited with this new life of recovery that I just didn't have room in my life for the old ways. When I was released, I spent about a year just attending meetings and working with recovery groups and living life in a different way. And eventually someone tapped me on the shoulder and said, "You should do peer support." And I didn't know what that even was. And they said, "It's what you do, Dave. That's who you are." And so I did a little bit of training and I applied for a few jobs. I turned down a couple of times, but I ended up getting a job with Odyssey House in the Alcohol and Other Drug Treatment Court. And that opened up a world of opportunity for me in terms of my personal and professional development and a career pathway. And peer support became my passion, and it still is. You know, people with lived experience using that lived experience to inspire others and just walk alongside them. You know, so I look at the key task of peer support is to light the spark of hope through connection at the start phase. At the other end, to empower self-determination. And in the middle, there's a little bit of work around that who am I, the identity and purpose. Very much like the drug treatment program of awareness, acceptance and self-control. Spent 5.5 years in the drug court team as a peer support specialist. During that time I did some study. I got a postgraduate diploma in mental health and addiction, and I moved into a peer manager role and built and managed a community peer team that still operates here today. I spent a year or two doing that, then into a consumer advisor role, which was more of a systems role, management facing, looking at gathering feedback with a view to service improvement. By that time I'd started a master's degree, and my role changed to learning and development lead, and I had relationships with a lot of organisations around the country, and then about a year or two ago I moved from that to where I sit today as the lived experience lead, and I sit in the executive team. Now, Odyssey House have been incredibly supportive for me throughout this journey. They've offered me opportunity, they've offered me training, and they've offered me support when I've struggled. And I can remember we all have dark times, and when I've had issues in my life, Odyssey has just been there for me. I love this organisation. Today I look back on my old life and I just think, what the hell was that all about? But I understand it. It's something we grew up into. And to look at myself today, I'm comfortable in my own skin, I'm excited, I'm involved in international initiatives and conversations, and it's a different world, and I want that for others. So if I was to go back to that young Dave, lost in that world, I'd just be talking about try listening and try giving it a go. I wasn't prepared to give it a go. It's almost like the hand of help was always there, but I didn't want it. Just take the hand and give it a go. You might be surprised. People with lived experience can actually be part of change, and I'd encourage you, if you're thinking about this, it's almost more than a career. It can be a lifestyle. It can be incredibly rewarding to be part of people's change, and that's what I do this for fulfillment and reward. My sponsor always said to me, "Don't keep your eyes off the dollars, Dave. Do what you love, and all that stuff will come," and it has.